You've heard of Rollo Tomassi. He wrote The Rational Male. He popularized the red pill. I wanted to get your reaction.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah, this clip here. He's talking about, does being romantic make you a simp? Basically, is what he's.
That's a good question.
You want to know why getting on one knee, getting on bended knee, and hoping that your paramour will take pity on your horribly love-stricken soul, right? Why is that romantic? Well, the reason why that is a romantic ideal is because it shows that the woman has sort of smitten the guy. He has no other choice. He's moved to get on one knee. Have you ever gotten on one knee? Have you gotten on your knees to pray? Like if you go to mass, you got the pews and everything, you pull down the pads and the knee pads. And I know because my mom was a confirmed Catholic, but that's really the only time I see people kneeing, unless they're taking a knee at the national anthem, right? So when you look at what does that signify?
So he's asking. It's an interesting question. I haven't heard it asked before. What does it signify historically? To get on your knee. Where did it come from? We think of it just as something from a Hollywood movie and all that.
Well, it's a reverence. I mean, it's like putting a female on a pedestal to say, you're going to be my woman. And I want you to be my woman. And
I mean, is that what it means? Is that what it means today?
Well,
signifies what's called abeyance. It is reverence. It is, I'm going to submit. I'm going to be deferential to this authority. And it used to be a sign. It used to be something that was very, very valued for women, because in a man's world, it was women who were the ones who had to sort of, had to swear or had to be at least abeyant. Is that a word? Abeyance to men. And so when the prince takes interest in the peasant girl and she has smitten him and he is controlled by love, all those great things you write 80s power ballads about. Yeah, all that. Get on one knee and you are taking that peasant girl and saying, you know what? Love has conquered my soul so much so that I will do anything for you. You are now my mistress, because masteress, whatever, in the sense that she now owns your soul, or now owns your heart. And that was a sign of abeyance. And it meant something back in the day when a guy was super alpha male and high value. So a guy getting on one knee to a woman, and the guy is a beta male, and he's very, wears his emotions on his sleeve, and he's pretty much just like 80, 90% of guys today getting on one knee. There's lots of guys that would be happy to do that, right? It used to be a rarity, and it used to be something that only men who had the value would do to confirm that they were in some way swearing fealty, right? You would do that to a king. You would do that to a queen. You do it God and country. You do it before God. You do it before your country. But you're going to do it for a woman. It used to mean something. Today it doesn't mean anything. It means very, very little. All those romantic gestures mean nothing, my friends.
What do you think?
As a woman, I would say that I like the idea of still being revered, and yet I get what he's trying to say as well.
But how about the idea that because our roles have changed, men's and women's roles have changed, that changed the meaning of that custom?
Well, I would have to say you're probably that is true. I think to some extent, like I said, I don't, as a female that is not young. Okay. Now, I think in some ways, the guy is getting himself into trouble in the sense of what kind of relationship is being set up at that moment. So it's kind of sad if you think about it. No, my reaction is I disagree with him.
You disagree with him?
Yeah.
That roles have changed and doesn't matter. It's still a great custom. Because he said it used to mean something, and now it doesn't mean anything at all, right? So he's talking about a specific thing where men who actually are not, they haven't really acquired much in the way of value or status, and here they are, getting down on one knee, and so they're not really giving up anything in one sense, as far as like being if you're a knight or whatever, it's kind of a weakness, right, to get on your knee. So they're giving up something. Is a man gets on it, today, does it have the same meaning if a man gets on? It's kind of like
No, it doesn't.
kind of it's saying that the woman owns the man now, because it didn't used to mean that.
No, it never meant that. That's the point.
It meant a certain deference
to the woman,
but now people feel like it means, some people, that the woman like now owns the man or whatever. So I don't know. Well, I wanted to look at something else, a little different.
Okay.
There was a commenter for this video. I thought he was darn good. So here the commenter Chivalry says, this whole thing that he's talking about, it comes from, quote, the religion of love in medieval European courts, modeled after the pledge of fealty that knights swore on one knee to their lords. That's where the tradition of rings comes from too. Knights were expected to serve a lady like vassals to a military commander with unquestioning loyalty, and to pine for her in an endless, unfulfilled stupor of love. She would basically play games with him, and he would submit to being played with, performing tasks and challenges, but never having his way with her. This was supposed to refine his soul. It spread from there into general society and culture. So he's talking about this thing in the late, I did a little research on this.
Yeah,
the late Renaissance era, called the religion of love, right? This is obviously Christendom era, and but there began this thing as we started having printing press and people are reading all sorts of books and whatever. There started being this thing. There was this book in 1535, right? It was actually a bestseller all across Europe, translated in different languages, by somebody named Leon Abreu. It was called Dialogues of Love, and that was the first place I could see where this idea of the religion of love transferring courtly, behavior to the merit, the courting a woman and whatever. Here's an actual picture of the book.
Oh wow,
it's amazing. It's like that's an actual book from 1535.
Actually beautiful. I like the etching.
So Abreu wrote this book. It became a bestseller all across intellectuals, church. Everybody was reading this book. It influenced Giordano Bruno, who was burned at the stake, if you remember, saying that the Copernican model was true. He was burned at the stake. He also had a certain pantheistic. That was maybe possibly the reason why he was burned at the stake, because he was really more of a pantheist, and he got a lot of those pantheistic ideas from Abreu, right? And then there's this whole question of, this is very interesting. I found out that Romeo and Juliet, Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, is all part of this whole idea of the religion of love in the late Renaissance.
So they called it the religion of love, or are we calling it that now?
Yeah, well, it's called that in academic literature and whatnot. So there's this paper called "The Consequence of Religious Imagery in Depicting Lovers' Relationships," and so I'm just going to read from that. It's pretty interesting. It's not super long, but I'm going to read from it because I think it really speaks to why things are so different now than they used to be. Throughout Romeo and Juliet, Shakespeare makes heavy use of religious imagery, especially when concerned with the young couple. This imagery serves two purposes in the play. It underlines the purity of Romeo and Juliet's love by associating it with a pure feeling such as religion, and it creates an escape from their damnation according to classical Christian values by creating the religion of love. In the Christian faith, which was ubiquitous in Shakespeare's England, suicide is against God's will and therefore punishable by eternal damnation. It would have been rather unpleasant for Shakespeare to leave his audience with an image of Romeo and Juliet in hell. Therefore, he had to find a way to quote, get around this problem. The lovers, in a sense, create their own religion in the play. This is exemplified from their first meeting when Romeo sees Juliet for the first time. He says, "Oh, she doth teach the torches to burn bright. It seems she hangs upon the cheek of night. as a rich jewel in an Ethiop's ear. His language here suggests their love standing out as a light against darkness, with Verona being a warring state of Italy at the time, the Capulets and Montagues being enemies, and the couple having everyone opposing their union. They had quite a lot of darkness to compete with. However, instead of being incorporated into this darkness, Romeo suggests here that their love stands separate from it as a bright light. This imagery creates a separate world for them. They are not a part of the same world, and therefore they are free to make their own rules, including religion. They do just that in the following sonnet of their first meeting, when Romeo says, "Touching hers, make blessed my rude hand." He reintroduces the theme of religion, and it sets the ground for the upcoming sonnet, which is filled with religious imagery. Romeo compares himself with a pilgrim, a person on a holy journey to visit a saint or a relic of a saint. He compares Juliet with the saint itself, like a pilgrim might feel when approaching a saint. He says that his hand is unworthy to touch this holy shrine. By comparing them to these holy figures, Romeo is setting up their own religion. Juliet elaborates on this conceit, saying, "Good pilgrim, you do wrong your hand too much. For saints have hands that pilgrims' hands do touch." She accepts his metaphor and therefore her part in the religion he has created for them. So she's, he starts this idea that it's like a religious idea, and she validates it, right?
She definitely did. Yeah.
As they go on, every word said contains a religious symbol for love. For example, in line 215, Juliet's use of the word prayer suggests not only the religious connotation, but also supplication to a person, or the courtship of a lady. In line 216, Romeo says, "Let lips do what hands do," suggesting that they put theirs together like one's hands in prayer. The analogies pile on each other with more and more urgency, ultimately leading to lovers' first kiss, sealing their subscription to their newfound faith, the religion of love. During the balcony scene, Romeo calls Juliet his bright angel, a winged messenger of heaven, comparing her again to a saint. Their faithfulness to their new religion at times verges on blasphemous. For example, Juliet calls Romeo the god of her idolatry. She rejects God and the Christian faith and replaces it with a new one. Romeo is her god now. It is he that she will worship and pray to and idolize. This may have shocked audiences members of Shakespeare's time, or it might have simply set in their minds the idea of Romeo and Juliet's religion of love. If the couple is exempt from Christianity and its rules, then they must be exempt from its damnation. One might even say that the idea of dying for someone else's sake is a Christian theme. Christ let himself be killed on the cross for the sins of mankind. Romeo and Juliet killed themselves for each other's sake or for the sake of love. If they are creating a new religion, they would be the martyrs. In essence, the lovers have created a religion of love to which they are more faithful than the Christian religion. This religion completely envelopes the couple. It is all that they live for, and it is what they ultimately die for. They are still faithfully religious people, even if it is not to Christianity, which may have put them in a better light in the audience's mind. If they are not Christian, then they do not have the same rules and restrictions regarding suicide and the afterlife as the audience had. This way, while the audience may have disapproved of the couple's actions, they would not have left the theater with a terrible image of them in hell. Shakespeare creates the religion of love for Romeo and Juliet so that although they committed the blasphemous act, they may remain virtuous. When Juliet says, "And palm to palm is holy Palmer's kiss," she's using the meaning of palm as a part of the body, and Palmer as a pilgrim returning from the Holy Land with palm branch. Here the body and the spirit, or sex and religion respectively, become interchangeable. Romeo answers with, "Have not saints lips and holy Palmers too?" Meaning, do not saints and pilgrims feel desire? He validates their desire to kiss by saying that holy figures feel these things also, further reinforcing their purity of their love. Romeo and Juliet teasingly exchange religious metaphors for kissing. By the end of the sonnet, they have established that a kiss is a prayer, and therefore it is all right for them to kiss. Throughout this sonnet, the young lovers confuse and interface their love with religion to the point where it takes on a pure and holy quality before the audience even knows what has happened. When speaking of his name in the garden, Romeo says, "Call me but love, and I'll be new baptized." One is baptized at birth, so the word carries connotations of being a baby or innocent. In addition, one is baptized to wash away one's sins. Romeo suggests that with Juliet's love, his sins are obliterated and he is as pure as a newborn child.
Wow.
So sum up, by associating Romeo and Juliet's love with religious terminology, Shakespeare avoids the Christian belief that to commit suicide was to spend the afterlife in hell. Romeo and Juliet avoid condemnation by essentially forsaking Christianity and creating a new religion with their own rules, the religion of love. So this is Romeo and Juliet, right?
Yeah,
Like the
I'm like
greatest
sitting here
play
going,
of the
wow.
Western civilization when it comes to like
I can't believe I didn't
love story.
really know. I mean, it's now I'm going to be reading it again, with the intent to see this because I can see it.
You never think of it as like a subversive.
Well,
kind
for
of
its
thing.
time, if you think about it, I mean, I'm going to now read it to see this concept within it, and so far they've got me, certainly.
Makes me think of that Madonna video, Just Like a Prayer. Just like a prayer. Actually, Madonna, her entire career probably, I suppose, could be said to be mixing religious imagery and all that.
She was definitely. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
I suppose her name itself possibly even has some religious connotation.
Oh, geez,
so that's I thought that was really interesting, and it all came from here. Mr. Chiburi, thank you.
Yeah.
Religion of love. I think that's a fascinating topic. It's kind of a forgotten.
So, are you? Is the intimation here is that the whole period of chivalry and whatnot was really kind of a means to an end?
I don't know about that. I mean, does that mean all of it's from some sort of, I think there's a equally good argument that Christianity helped create this idea of romantic love, and you wouldn't have had it without it, and that in other words, it comes from sort of Christian ideals and whatever. But I really don't know anything more about than that. That's just my thought. I don't think that it means that, we better do away with all romantic love because it's not Christian or something.
No. I'm not thinking that thought either. I'm just thinking that if you're trying to shift, art is one of the best ways to do it. I mean, art.
Whether or not it was intended to be subversive and actually set up this thing. I mean, if you think about it, there's you hear a lot about, remember the 1960s, it was like the Beatles says, all you need is love, are there,
that's what
are there are they subversive, ideas being presented all over the place?
Promoted,
probably.
But what is their conception of the meaning of love at that point? Because in the 60s, the conception of the meaning of love was I
think it was radically different.
But
it does seem to hark back to that idea of
as a female to be more.
So like Dialogues of Love, 1535. That's way back there. But this was the first. I've read some of this. It was the first time it was presented, the idea of love as something that was kind of like a force in the universe. It was, it was like almost like
a god in its own right.
Yeah, basically, just it wasn't like love as in a Christendom kind of worldview sense, but it was like it was this independent thing that just sort of there in the world, and I think that you could see parallels to that in a lot of things in modern aesthetic and whatnot.
I'd have to agree because I think to me sometimes the artist is also the intellectual in the community. So more often than any, depending on what ideas they want to promote, they're going to design their work to promote that idea. So if you're, all right. Well, that was a good one. I enjoyed this.
Next one, we're going to read some comments based on our last video that kind of blew up a little bit.
Yeah.
But so you can check on for that. That should be like tomorrow. Whatever.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you. Well, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And what's the other one?
Ring the bell.
Ring that bell.
Whatever.
There's another song.
Like, subscribe, ring the bell. Whatever.
Like, subscribe, ring that bell.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Bye-bye.